right, so this section of the book has to do with classification, which is actually what your entire project was over, is classification. One of the biggest mistakes, and not necessarily in this class, but in all my students that I saw, was say I was looking specifically for order, genus, and species, and a lot of you would put a word that had already been used, like you would put the family down as the order. And so I ask that when you're doing projects, you think about it. Like if you were doing a math problem and it says you had 150 apples and you sold 20 and you bought 80 more, you know how you do that? If you end up with a weird number that makes no sense, you should probably check your math. Same thing goes with classification. If you've already used that word, you should say, something's fishy here. I need to go in and do further research and make sure that I've got the right order down, I've got the right family down. It's just because you find it on the internet doesn't mean what. Right. Okay? And so that was a big issue, is that a lot of people were kind of using the same words for different parts of classification. Another big thing that you need to remember in binomial nomenclature, the genus is always capitalized and the species is always lowercase. And those two things together make a scientific name. So genus and species shouldn't match your scientific name. In some cases, that didn't match either. Okay? But other than that, not too terribly disappointed. That was pretty good. So when we're talking about classification, how would you classify a human being? Let's start with the kingdom. What kingdom are we in? You're in what? Animalia, which means you're a what? An animal. You're not a plant, you're not a produce. Okay? What is the phylum, you think, for human beings? Do you have a notochord? Do you have a backbone?
Yes.
Yes, so you're chordatic, which means you have a notochord. Okay? Spinal cord. What class are we? Are you a bird or are you a fish? No. Mammal, mammalia. What order are you? You stand upright. What does that mean? You're what? You're an ape. The order is close. Primate. So yes, the same as an ape as far as order is concerned. What family are you? Hominidae. You're a hominid. That means you walk on 2 feet. And your genus? Yeah, what is the scientific name? Homo sapiens. So what would your genus be? Homo. And your species? Sapien. Okay? So there you go. We just classified you. So, you all were working with insects. What was the kingdom for insects? Kingdom? Animalia. We're in the same kingdom as insects. Interesting. What about the phylum? Do they have spinal cords? No, they don't. Exoskeletons. Okay? And where were the orders? How many orders were there? 30 orders. Okay? And let's do a little quizzing here. Who knows the order for beetles? Coleoptera. Who knows the order for grasshoppers? Orthoptera. What was the order for butterflies? Lepidoptera. Look at that. You already know some. It's just in your brain. Isn't that weird? So strange, because you know, they didn't spend that long on it, and you already got some Latin that's hanging out in your brain. So we do this with all organisms, from the microscopic ones all the way up to the really big ones. So that's what this section is about. We're going to name the 3 domains and 4 kingdoms of organisms and list the characteristics of each. So you've got a chart you've got to fill out in your notes today. Explain the importance of bacteria and fungi in the environment. Describe the role of protists in the ocean environment. And how organisms interact and depend on one another for survival. So most scientists classify organisms into 3 domains and 4 kingdoms based on different characteristics. Members of the 3 domains eat their food in different ways and are made up of different types of cells. The cell is the smallest unit of biological organization. Can an organism be smaller than a cell? No. It cannot, because it is the smallest unit of biological organization. The cells of animals, plants, fungi, and protists all have a nucleus. And remember, a nucleus is like a fried egg. For that, for cells with a nucleus is like a fried egg. And what's inside the nucleus? I didn't hear it. DNA. It's DNA and RNA. Okay, so that's the genetic code for that organism. The cells of bacteria, fungi, and plants are different in that they have cell walls. What does a cell wall do? It protects it and it gives it what? A rigid shape, structure. Can we break cell walls? Yes. How do we break them? You do what? You can smush them. What else can you do? You cut them. What else can you do? Or burn them. What about freezing them? They'll explode. Exactly. That's why when you leave that bag of salad in your refrigerator and it's shoved to the back and it's really, really cold, and you pull it out and it's got ice crystals in it, and you're like, maybe this will be okay when it falls out. And it's a clump of slime. It's because you compromise the cell wall with lettuce. And lettuce, once it freezes, turns into food. Black, nasty food. So that's the purpose of cell wall. So the levels of classification are as follows. They are archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So those are the 3 domains. What is the study of ancient things called? Archaeology. See a word up there that's similar to that? So what do you think archaea means? Old, ancient. So what's the oldest domain? Archaea. Okay? Archaeobacteria, they are bacteria, are unicellular. Uni means 1. The cells lack nuclei. They reproduce by fission or dividing in half and are found in harsh environments. So these would include methanogens, which live in swamps and produce methane gas. Y'all heard of swamp gas before? That's caused by archaeobacteria. They're decomposing and releasing methane, and when you burn methane, it glows blue. And so a lot of the ghost stories about ghosts in swamps come from methane fires of swamp gas. That's weird. Another type is thermophiles. What's thermos mean? Hot. So they live in hot springs and geysers and hydrothermal vents in the bottom of the ocean. Next is regular bacteria. These are also unicellular. They have no nuclei. They reproduce by fission. But these are incredibly common. These are the ones that we would come in contact with. They cause strep throat, or they live in your gut and help you digest food. 2 examples would be proteobacteria, which we find in the soil and in animal intestines, including yours. And then cyanobacteria, which we sometimes call algae. Blue-green algae. So that's another reason why common names are really confusing, is because when I say algae, you think plant, right? Algae can be a protist, a plant, or a bacteria. Isn't that weird? So algae is kind of a real general term for microscopic something or another that produces its own food. Based on its characteristics, like its cellular structure. Okay? That's its domain. and eukarya. These are unicellular or multicellular. They contain nuclei, and they can reproduce asexually or sexually. Which of the three domains do we get classified? Eukarya. Okay? So remember, you are in eukarya. Makes sense, right? I'll spell the same way in a sentence. Examples are fungi, protists, plants, and animals. Then we break it down further within eukarya to four kingdoms. The first is fungi. Fungi absorb their food through their body surface. They have cell walls, and they live on land. So, can they make their own food? Fungi. They cannot. Okay? They include yeast, mushroom, mold, mildew, and rust. Now, this isn't like rust on your car. It's a disease that plants get called rust. Next is kingdom protista. These are unicellular mostly. There's a few multicellular ones, and most of these live in water. Examples are diatoms, dinoflagellates, amoebas, trypanosomes, paramecium, and euglena. If you ever look at pond water, most of those things that are wiggling around are protists. Next is plantae. These are multicellular. All plants are multicellular. Okay? So if an algae is a plant algae, it's not single celled, it's multicellular. They make their own food through photosynthesis, and they all have cell walls. Ferns, mosses, trees, herbs, and grasses, and so on. And finally, kingdom Animalia. These are all multicellular. They have no cell wall. They must ingest their food, and they live on land and on water. They include corals, sponges, worms, insects, fish, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Okay? So be able to tell me the three domains of the four kingdoms and what will go into what in the text. Right? So let's just start with archaea and bacteria. Archaea differ from bacteria in their genetics and the makeup of their cell wall. They are ancient. They were the first things on the planet, first living things. Bacteria are microscopic, unicellular. They usually have a cell wall and reproduce by cell division. Unlike all other organisms, bacteria and archaeobacteria lack nuclei. So instead of having DNA inside that little fried egg-looking structure, their DNA is just swimming around inside the whole organism, which allows them to do something weird. They can bump into one another, bumping into him, and share genetic information. That's weird. It's not considered sexual reproduction, but what it does is it allows them to mutate rapidly. And so that's why we have a hard time keeping up with bacteria that cause disease. It's because all they have to do is touch, because the DNA is not inside a nucleus, they can share genetic information and change. It doesn't even have to be the same type of bacteria. Okay? So archaea are old bacteria, and eubacteria are common bacteria that you find all over the place, including on you. So where do you find eubacteria? On you. Are you a eukaryote? Yes. Okay. They live in every habitat on Earth, from hot springs to the bodies of animals. Some break down the remains of waste of other organisms and return nutrients to the soil. So they break down food in the digestive tract. They also decompose organic matter. They're found in yogurt. If they are alive, when you buy yogurt, you're buying live bacteria culture. And they can fix nitrogen for plants. They can take atmospheric nitrogen and turn it into nitrate or nitrite with plants can use. Certain bacteria that live in your gut are responsible for your survival. So this is kind of gross. If you take like a lot of antibiotics and kill your gut bacteria, you will die. How do you reckon we get bacteria back into the gut after we killed it all? yogurt. That might work. If that doesn't work, what else do you think they have to do to get bacteria back into your gut? What kind of surgery? Put it back in there. So they have to have a particular kind of bacteria that's found in your digestive tract that has to go back into your digestive tract. So what do you think they have to put in there? Could be a dead person, but a dead person's what? He's got it. It's called a food transplant. That's exactly what it sounds like. They have to take donated food from a healthy individual and put it back into your gut so that you can reproduce those bacteria and digest your food. Huh?
It could be a dead person.
Well, I mean, if they get it quick enough, you can make donations. I think it takes about $125 per donation.
Not poop.
Yep, but you can't get it the normal way. They have to go in and get it. No, hey, it's $125. And you have to have absolutely no medical problems, including you can't be overweight, which I don't really understand. But I looked the criteria up one day just because I was curious. So, no diseases, any kind. No, just can't be overweight, can't have any diseases, can't take any medication. I guess not before you give your donation. So, but I know that is something that happens, for farmers for a really long time because when my goats have problems with their stomachs, I have to do a cud transfer, which goats have three stomachs, so they barf up their food and mix it with bacteria and they swallow it again and do it another time. But if you get some of that cud while it's in their jaw and you put it in your sick goat, you can heal your sick goat with cud. So, yeah, science is sometimes gross, but that's how they fix it if you don't have a good, healthy gut bacteria. Of course, the first thing you're going to try is yogurt. So if you can't go to the bathroom and you're having digestive issues, what's the first thing you should do? Eat yogurt. And so one of the gut bacteria that we use is called E. coli or Escherichia coli. And it's perfectly normal to have it in your lower intestine and your colon, but if it gets in your upper intestine, it can kill you. Okay? Y'all probably heard a couple years ago, Jack in the Box had some hamburger that didn't get cooked really well and it killed some little kids because it was E. coli. Now, hamburger is made by all the cuts of meat that aren't good enough to be steak or tender. So they throw it in a grinder and they grind it all up. So cow lips, all the leftovers. Sometimes, because of that grinding process, they get contaminants from the intestine of the cow, the lower intestine of the cow, where the E. coli lives. That's why you have to eat your hamburgers cooked well. Steak, you can wash a steak off. And so you can eat your steak rare or medium rare and be fine. But the hamburger is ground up. Okay, so you can't wash hamburger. That's why you do not eat raw hamburger or rare hamburger, is because E. coli could be in there, and it will kill you. It'll make an adult really sick, but a small child or an elderly person that's already immunocompromised can die from E. coli bacteria. But it's good in the lower intestine. It helps us extract nutrients, and without it, we would die. So you can watch that clip if you want to later, not for today. Next is fungus. A fungus is an organism whose cells have nuclei. They also have cell walls, but they do not have chlorophyll. So they cannot do what? Make their own food. So fungi are going to grow on things that have died. Mushrooms only grow on plants. Molds and mildews grow on dead animals. Without bacteria and fungi, the world would be a really disgusting place because if a dog got hit by a car, it would just lay there on the side of the road until the elements broke it down. So they help us get rid of the dead stuff. Okay? Vultures also do that, yes. But vultures don't eat all of it, whereas the bacteria and the fungus do. They eat the hair, they eat everything. say, yes, black mulchers are on the protected species list, even though we've got plenty of them. Because at one time they were declining because of DDT, but they aren't any longer. They just haven't taken them off the list. So cell walls act like mini skeletons, allowing the fungus to stand upright. So same thing goes with a mushroom. If you put it in the freezer, it gets kind of squishy and doesn't, stay kind of crunchy still. It's kind of flaccid. Interesting thing about mushrooms is they're the reproductive structures of fungus. So the fungus lives under the ground in this kind of root-like structure called hyphae. If you ever looked in a log when we were hunting for insects and you saw like white stuff inside a rotting log, that was the fungus. These only pop up when the fungus is ready to sexually reproduce. So yes, you eat sexual reproductive organs and fungi on your pizza. And it's good. I love mushrooms. They're so good. And they have no calories. So they taste like meat and they don't have calories. You don't like them or you do? I don't. Oh, I love them. Especially the big portobello mushrooms that you can put on the grill. Stuff.
I'll just stick to them.
So, mushrooms only grow on what? Plants. Molds and mildews grow on dead animals. So how do they get nutrients out of their food? Well, they release a chemical that breaks down organic matter and turns it into like a juice that they can suck up. Yeah, kind of gross. So their bodies are huge networks of threads that grow throughout the soil and dead wood on which the fungus is feeding. They play an important role in breaking down the bodies of dead organisms. And they too die and put those nutrients back into the soil. And so there are fungus that eat fungus. And there are bacteria that eat fungus. Everything gets eaten. They can be bad. How many in here have had athlete's foot? Fun! Athlete's foot is caused by a fungus that lives in the dark, moist areas of the body and breaks down the glucose in your system. So fungus like sugar. And so this is what athlete's foot looks like. Yeast is another type of fungus. You can get a yeast infection. It's called thrush if it's in your mouth. It's called jockitch if it's in your groin. And it can also grow in your armpits, anywhere that's dark and hot and steamy. And this is the exact same yeast that we use to make bread dough rise. Okay? So, the yeast eats sugar. If you're going to make bread, you have to give it some sugar to eat. And it expands by releasing carbon dioxide through the fermentation of the sugar. So that's what's causing your bread to be fluffy as CO2 gas is being released. Also, yeast is used in producing beer and wine. Does anybody know how they traditionally made wine? Where do you get your yeast from? It's grapes, but it's not on the grapes. They have to add the yeast where they get it from. Nope, not from grain. I'm hearing it. Beans. So they would pick the grapes, and the ladies would get in the wine vat, and stomp around with their feet. Yum. So wine and beer are the waste product of fungus. You're drinking fungus. They are very flavorful. They cause cheese to have good flavor. You ever heard that they say that cheese sometimes smells like feet? Now you know why. Feet smell like feet because of fungus. And unfortunately, it's made from from the fungus that are on the feet. Yeah.
I'm good.
Well, the wine and beer are the byproducts, so they're like the waste material of the.
So it's not like great.
Yeah. Still does. So humans are a strange animal. We eat some really weird stuff. And, we've been eating for 40,000 years, and I don't know who the first person was that was like, let me stick my feet in this and see if that tastes good. Or let's eat this thing that just shot out the back of a bird's butt. Let's see if that tastes good. Eggs. I don't eat eggs. I draw the line at eggs.
Wow.
Because I've seen them laid. Chickens have one opening for everything.
I've seen.
But it's
but
you
you're
watch.
still.
And have you seen them freshly laid in a cool winter's morning when they steam?
Yeah, it's cool. Everyone. Okay, but it's the outside. I don't.
Yeah, they're porous.
And then all our chickens got eggs.
We have 120 chickens, but I still don't eat eggs because my grandmother made me pick up eggs when I was a little kid. She sent me out in the morning because I was annoying her probably. She like, don't come in until all the chickens have laid their eggs. So I'd be there waiting on them, because they're sitting on their nests, and when they're about to lay, they stand up a little bit, and then they shoot out the back of the chicken. If it's cold, they steam, and they're slimy. And I was like, I ain't eating them. And I'll still eat them if I don't know I'm eating. Like getting chocolate cake or something.
Oh, so you didn't, so you like just won't eat them plain.
I ain't cracking them in a pan and eat them.
Why?
Because I've seen them lay. They have one, they come out with two
so
on them. They come out with two on them.
And then you wipe them off.
So do babies.
Well,
There's a lot of people that actually.
yes, but it's not the same as. I'm real particular about accents and infants. Next are produce. Produce is kind of the kingdom where we stick everything that doesn't fit anywhere else because they're all weird. So if you're a weirdo, you're stuck into the produce category. It's diverse. Some are amoeba-like, some are plant-like, some are fungi-like. Most are unicellular. Most are microscopic, but not all. It includes diatoms. These are diatoms. These are really tiny shell organisms that are responsible for the grit in toothpaste. They get them from mining sand off the ocean. Another important protost is the plasmodium, which lives in the abdomen or the stomach of the mosquito, the female Anopheles mosquito. Doesn't hurt the mosquito, but when it bites you, if it's there, she regurgitates that blood meal into your bloodstream and allows the plasmodium protist to get into your bloodstream, and it can kill you. Malaria is the name of the disease, and it is the #1 killer on the planet. More people die of malaria than anything else. Want to fight something? Fight malaria. This one is my favorite. This is a dog vomit slime mold. That's why they call it dog vomit slime mold. It looks like dog vomit. It's about 6 billion tiny produce living in a colony. And this is a freaky thing. They eat mulch. So if you've got mulch at your house or you send it in a business, looks like somebody barked on the mulch. It's a produce colony. They can move, y'all. They got these little flagella and they can whip their tails back and forth and they can move. So if they all get whipping together at the same time, they can move like 6 to 10 inches. So, yeah. See, moving dog vomit is a produce colony.
How long does it take them to move?
Long time.
Why do I get away fast enough?
Hey, I think it's still good. This is a misunderstood produce right here. This is a multicellular produce. This is kelp. Everybody thinks kelp is a plant. It is not. It is a produce that has chlorophyll. So that makes them pretty because they can produce their own food. Or not. Just depends. And kelp forests are the nursery of the ocean. This is where most baby fish are born and live until they're big enough to go out to the open ocean. So without this produce right here, our entire food chain collapses. Algae are plant-like produce that can make their own food using light energy from the sun through photosynthesis, and they can be giant or unicellular. They're the initial source of food for most ocean and freshwater ecosystems. And we're going to stop there. Go ahead and open your Chromebooks to Classroom and go to Active Reading 4.3. Active Reading 4.3. You're going to open this in Cami and turn it in Cami. Ethan, do you understand how to turn stuff in and all that? Okay.
I guess I want to do something real.
Come here and let me work on it with you.
This classification thing
Yep.
didn't say. I was on the second to last slide and then I went home and tried to do it, but
It had already lost it.
Yep.
Okay, when you do this,
see, it's not.
you're going to edit it. It's going to ask you how you want to open it, and it's in slides. So over here, hey guys, you should not be talking, you should be working. Yes. Yes, sign out and take the pass. So you can,
It didn't say.
so you can type over here. You were able to do that, right?
Yeah, I did everything.
Okay. I also usually like you to change the color of this. What you have to do is you have to go File. Let's see. It should say.
Because I did all of it yesterday. It didn't say. And I asked people and they said it would save automatically.
It should have.
And I don't. And since I just moved, we don't have Wi-Fi yet. So I can't do it at home.
I think you need to go File, Make a Copy. And track that way. So try and finish that in Reaching Readers today, okay? But work on the active reading right now. So active reading, we'll just leave that tab open. You go here, and this time it should ask you if you want to open it with Cami. And you say yes. And then down here I've got instructions on how to save that. I know there's a learning curve there. I'm sorry that you're having to deal with it.
Oh yeah, because we were just doing.
You mean Coffee County's more advanced than Riverdale?
Yeah, a little bit.
If you got my novel for English, because I keep forgetting about this first time I can do it.
Yeah. Let's see, we're gonna give it.
I really know we didn't get Chromebooks. We just, if we had one, we brought it. And if we didn't, you do it on paper.
We're gonna allow it to work here.
It's a lot more strict there. Like, if you didn't do it, then if you have no way to do it, then it's a 0.
It's a 0 here too. I'm pretty sure we just answered all these questions. Hey guys, there should not be talking. You should be working. All right, so watch real quick here. When you're done, even if you're not finished, to save your work, you're going to go to Save, Advanced Export, Google Drive, with annotations and then hit begin export. And then you can open that back up in Google Drive and finish it, save it again, and then upload it back up into the assignment. Okay? And you can write on it. There's your pen right there. Or you can do a text box, which is a little neat. Okay? All right, please try and have the active reading complete by the end of class. If you do not finish, it becomes homework. And remember, you can go ahead and start studying. Our test will be next Tuesday over Chapter 4.